Hey everyone, it's been a bit since I last uploaded, but today I'm going to be bringing another character specific video. This one's going to be about using Wii Fit's ball in neutral, which I think is a really important aspect to using her as a character. So I'm going to describe the process that I try to use when I'm trying to do it, show off some techniques and strats that I have, and see if that might be able to help other people who are looking to play Wii Fit and want to get better. Wii Fit has a pretty poor kit for close quarter situations, and characters that are very fast or that have a lot of disjoint to their moves often end up giving Wii Fit a pretty hard time. You may see Wii Fit's plank near the ledge or play in the corner, often because from here, header or side B will offer an opportunity to get some free damage, might even be able to be comboed off of. But from a game theory perspective, it's a bit dangerous to put yourself there in the corner. You're giving up all stage positioning, and if you get knocked away in the wrong way or get called out pretty hard, it could wind up being very bad. Not only that, but Wii Fit's most consistent setups are achieved using on-stage options like falling nair, fair, or even using something like platforms to help get better setups. The top Wii Fit reps tend to use ball to help improve Wii Fit's neutral. Today I'll talk about some of the techniques you can use to maximize ball in neutral and show off some of the ways that you can utilize this very important part of Wii Fit's kit. So why would we use it in neutral to begin with? The major benefit is that it can be used to cover the grounded lane right in front of Wii Fit. Here, the ball breaks the approach of an opponent and creates a barrier to help us fend off potential attacks, maybe even help us approach an opponent. Now the question that follows is usually, how do we try to shoot ball? Let's take a look. So we can cancel header mid-move by pressing shield at any point, but even if we don't do that, there are still a lot of trajectories that regular side B hits at. The difference can actually be quite a bit. So for example, it can kind of go pretty high, it can kind of sink a little bit lower, it can go even lower than that, right? It can go extra low, right? Basically, there are lots of different ways that it can bounce off, and we want to make use of that to help layer our neutral. Normally, I find that aiming low on an opponent's shield is a very good strategy for making neutral a little bit easier. When ball gets blocked or shielded, it reactivates a little bit later on. If you aim kind of low, if you hit the ground in front of them, it'll basically bounce back and get back in their way if they try to rush you down afterwards. If you hit higher on their shield, such as around their head, it'll basically bounce up in the air in a way that's kind of like a aerial coverage. So if they try to drift in, jumping in, that's where it'll cover a little bit better. Now, the hardest part about this is mostly about creating the time and space to be able to set up this side B. You usually need a decent amount of room to do this because faster characters can rush you down pretty quick, and characters with really fast projectiles can also kind of interrupt it. But if you can create the opportunity, you can put pressure on your opponent without getting too close to them. And so it's one of many options that you can use in neutral. It's not necessarily about mashing side B every chance that you get, but it is a fairly low risk situation so long as you're paying attention to the spacing. Bear in mind that this move still has a decent amount of startup and end lag, so there still are costs to using this move. When you get really good at managing the different trajectories, you can use that bounce back to re-hit the ball again, basically. So if you end up seeing a situation where basically it's going to bounce off of them, you can hit it again to try and basically force another situation. This is really good if the opponent starts really kind of respecting that space in front and doesn't kind of inch forward after blocking ball. And when you are going for bounce hits, I do suggest using header as the hit to knock it twice, just because it does have a fair bit lower lag than other moves like dare, which are, it'll put you in a lot more hit lag. Just because you're hitting it. So when you actually use header, you might even be able to kind of combo off of it. If someone shields it and you kind of hit it in, you actually may be able to get a pretty close to true back air or grab. So let's talk now about canceling header. What you want to do is fastball it immediately so that you become actionable as soon as possible. Once it's been dropped, you can basically use all of Wii Fit's kit and tools as you see fit to move the ball. Sun can move it, but it basically won't have a hitbox until you've knocked it with something else, like for example another move. So that one, for example, would have had a hitbox. To demonstrate, this is what it looks like when it does have a hitbox. But essentially you can use all sorts of different moves, and the canceled versions are kind of better for harder callouts and covering a little bit more unique spaces. The ones that I tend to enjoy quite a bit are front hit jab F tilt I like as well too. I also like up tilt, but I usually space it backwards just so that I can fast fall up tilt right away. Otherwise you can kind of like turn it around like that, and that sends it at a different angle too, right? All these different hitboxes have different angles. If you hit it at a lower height, it will go a slightly different trajectory as well too. And Nair I also like quite a bit because of the kind of upwards trajectory that it does have there. These options, when you're using them, you can basically layer the ball neutral that you have using regular side B. So if you have all of this together, while also being able to, for example, use ball like this, like this, any sort of combination really, you can put together a ton of different kind of setups to close the distance against your opponent. Control and spacing are key factors in this strategy, but practice does make perfect. In some matchups, you might be having an easier time doing this, while in other matchups, it might feel like you can't do this. Against faster characters, you usually need more space, and against zoners, you may need to force them to either stop using projectiles, or you might have to abandon using ball altogether just because you don't have the time for it. When both of these sort of situations end up happening, a lot of the times Sun Salutation becomes a very important aspect because it's basically a charged, hard-hitting move that you can send out just that little bit forward. I find that it's almost kind of like a last line of defense, so a lot of times I actually throw it out with the intent of hitting right in front of me rather than trying to send across the stage in the same way that I would with ball. Charge shots usually want some level of distance to help kind of combo or whatnot, but Sun being as slow as it is, I think is actually more designed to be a point blank type of option. Maybe a little bit of distance for sure, but not nearly as much as some of the other charge shots in this game. So if you fire it up close, it has a higher chance of actually hitting them, and it's harder to react to. Furthermore, if you are actually using ball neutral to help kind of slow the pace down, if you are able to bait them into a space, the whiff punish becomes a lot easier to do. So that's why you want to hold on to the Sun as kind of a partial charge to make sure that it's always ready, always on hand, and to let it go. The final kind of closing bit that I do want to mention for this is that ball neutral is meant to help Wii Fit's neutral. It's not meant to be the entirety of it. So I mentioned earlier, you don't want to just be mashing this whenever, but this is a very key element to her kit. It's what allows her to basically remain competitive because a lot of times she'll get out frame dated, out disjointed, that sort of thing. She doesn't have a very easy way of landing directly on her opponent or challenging space horizontally. It usually requires some level of risk on her part, and so this is to help make that easier without having to sacrifice stage positioning, or not nearly as much as something like planking does. Using this, you can alter the pacing of the game, but you also have to adapt. So if neutral is going too fast to set things up, then you have to start making use of her get off me tools, some of her tilts or aerials, to knock away the opponent, to force them to respect you. And honestly, if they won't approach, then just go nuts. Create setups, try and see if that can help you either make them come to you or make your own approach easier. So that'll be all for today. I really apologize that I haven't been getting any content out in the last little bit. I'm going to try my best to try and step that up again. I usually try and get an upload within every 2 weeks. I know that I haven't been doing that, so try and look forward to an upload about 2 weeks from now. Leave any comments down below if you have any questions. Otherwise, take care.